When the Taliban's in power, men doesn't lose anything from that government. Everything they have, of course, woman is gonna be, their right, their education, everything they do is against women. Like, and when everyone asking them why there's no woman in your government and your list, they just say we don't need a woman to be part of the government. Why they're not part of the government? They try to use violence, they lock them, they shut the internet, everything down on them so they cannot post it in social media, so the world cannot see it. There's no place for innocent people, women, children, their future. It's unknown. Nobody knows what's going to happen to any of them. But Pakistan is there for who? For the Taliban, to maintain it for them, to send a fighter for them, to support them, fight with them. They are just afraid of women for some reason. I don't know why. They are afraid of women, which is basically known for the entire world. They have a war just against women. And that's what they have done in the past. They took away my childhood, the freedom of my speech, the freedom of having a right to be educated.
I heard your father, your mother, your brother were also targeted and they had to leave the country.
So many times, yes. My brother been targeted twice and she got beat up, she got punished just because her feet was showing, and that's not because she purposely did it, because I cannot work under the government that they are violent, they're extremist. My answer will be no. Most of them, they should have been in jail at the moment, but they are in power in Afghanistan. So it's kind of scary to see how all this is going to happen. So when the Taliban are in power, when the Taliban are, very strong, of course, the country is going to be in the hand of Pakistan.
Hello and welcome to the Rooster News. A brave woman who's continued to talk about Taliban, the brutality which is happening against women in Afghanistan, the first woman pilot officer of Afghan Air Force, Niloofar Rahmani. The Rooster News tried to reach out to the brave lady to understand how she is seeing the changes which is happening in Afghanistan, her friends, her relatives, her family who are left out in Afghanistan, what she thinks about them. Is that any way where women are safe in Afghanistan? There are so many questions which we need to get answers. A lady who had seen Taliban, who had seen Taliban when she was a child, she had to quit her schooling. Once the US forces taken over Afghanistan, that is the time when Niloofar resumed her schooling. And one fine day, she became the first pilot of Afghanistan's Air Force. Here, Niloofar is joining with us over a Zoom call. Let's connect and ask all possible questions. Let's understand what is happening in Afghanistan and what is her take on Taliban. Welcome to the Roost News, Niloofar, and thank you so much for joining with us. My first question, how do you see the new government, Taliban government in Afghanistan?
Well, thank you for having me. If you ask me, I don't actually recognize the Taliban government as an actual government. And I don't think I would ever recognize them as a real government.
Okay. Niloofar, you have seen your childhood under Taliban's rule. And I heard I have read about you where you have to drop your schooling when they were ruling Afghanistan, and later when the US came into the picture, and that is when you resumed your schooling, and then today what you are, the first woman pilot of Afghanistan. So how do you see the Taliban then and the Taliban now?
Well, definitely, they are still the same Taliban that they were 20 years ago. They're still the same, probably even worse, because, when the Taliban's in power, men doesn't lose anything from that government. Everything they have, of course, woman is gonna be, their right, their education, everything they do is against women. Like we all know, they announced their government and there's not even one position open for a woman. And when everyone asking them why there's no woman in your government and your list, they just say, we don't need a woman to be part of the government. They start doing what they were doing before. Woman has no place on their government. Woman has no voice. Woman has no right any part of the Taliban's government. And it's really scary and concerning to see that all those women that 20 years, they're all educated, they all have a voice, they all have a right. Now it's all taken away from them. In the matter of 2 seconds, it's all gone. And I'm honestly very concerned about their future. And they're trying to raise their voices, they're trying to speak out, but all they get is a violence from the Taliban. They get beat up, they turn off the Wi-Fi. So when they show their violence, women are not allowed to even post it to the world to show the Taliban hasn't changed. They're still the same people that they were 20 years ago, probably even worse.
Niloofar, your family, friends, and maybe your colleague must be there back in Afghanistan. So, are you worried and concerned about them, about their future, about their career, about their safety, security?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely concerned about each one of them in Afghanistan because I know they're not going to have any peace. They're not going to have any voice. They're not going to have any rights under that government because that government is all violence. The people are in charge of that government. They're all extremist group supported by Pakistan. There's no place for innocent people, women, children, their future. It's unknown. Nobody knows what's going to happen to any of them.
Niloofar, my very serious question, and the entire world is worried about it. Now the new Taliban, which is there in Afghanistan, they are equipped. They are equipped with advanced weapon. They are equipped with the leftovers of what US military was using. They have helicopters, advanced helicopters. They have fighter aircrafts. So being in pilot, do you think it's a big threat to the world? Will they be able to utilize all those equipments, all those weapons?
It's very concerning to see that, even Afghan government wasn't that well equipped that the Taliban's are. There is some news that the US destroyed all those airplanes, all those equipments. And I have seen a couple of videos that, the Taliban's were using helicopters and some of the, the helicopters and airplanes that was still working probably. But even though if all of them are destroyed, they need a maintenance, they need somebody to, maintain them, and they need a pilot. So unfortunately, it's not only the equipment left from America that they are using. There is a country behind them that's supporting the Taliban, even though, all the equipments are destroyed, right? All the US equipments are destroyed and the airplanes are destroyed, so the Taliban cannot use it. But Pakistan is there for who? For the Taliban to maintain it for them, to send a fighter for them, to support them, fight with them. So when the Talibans are in power, when the Talibans are, very strong, of course, the country is going to be in the hand of Pakistan. That's something that they wanted to happen over a century and years and years. And that's exactly the thing. Even if the US left those airplanes or equipments, there is a country that it's going to maintain all of that.
You were working with Afghanistan's Air Force, right? And you being a pilot. I think I'm 200% sure that you would have been knowing a lot more things than what the rest of the world know. What kind of influence does Pakistan was having over Taliban and Afghanistan?
Well, not only I would say that most of the Afghan people would tell you Pakistan plays a huge game in Afghanistan. They interference with everything in Afghanistan. They are the cancer for Afghanistan. Until that cancer is not wiped from the earth, Afghanistan never is going to be in peace. Because over years, Pakistan always interferes with Afghanistan's political matters, with the land, with everything. And now we all know how the Taliban gets so trained, well trained, they get equipped. Of course, it's the Pakistan, the training base, the ISIS-K, whoever you can name it, they are trained inside Pakistan. And that's everybody would even say that Pakistan plays a huge game in Afghanistan. And even though recently it has nothing, Pakistan has no right to interference with Afghanistan's war right now with the government, but we all saw Pakistan supported the Taliban. They fought against Afghans up north, and they supported the Taliban to destroy and fight against the Mujahideen up north. It's heartbreaking to see some country that has nothing to do with Afghanistan is interfering with the government of Afghanistan. They're destroying, they're taking. Basically, if the Taliban are in power, it means Pakistan is in power. And I would like to say that whoever countries right now are supporting Pakistan with all this, they do have all the blood of innocent Afghan people are in hand of all those countries that support Pakistan. And they led them to do whatever they are doing right now, destroying all the futures of Afghan women, the child, the innocent people in Afghanistan. And everybody is silent. Nobody even raised a voice to tell them they have to stop.
Okay. So the new Taliban is ensuring that women will get their rights. They can go out for work, they can study, they can go to college, university and all. Do you believe them?
No. Already I have seen it. Word means nothing. It means nothing. If they promise the world that we have changed, we're going to give the woman's right. Okay, does somebody tells me in the government, is there any woman? When you ask them, they already separated the schools and the colleges. Why? Even though you ask them why a woman has no place in your government, in the Afghanistan's new government, which is not even a government, they just say, we don't see a place for a woman. And there is no place, there's no hope for Afghan women or the future of Afghan women or their education or their future in this Taliban's government, because their action shows more. They silence the women. Women are trying to protest against their, what they are, actually why they're not part of the government. They try to use violence, they lock them, they shut the internet, everything down on them so they cannot post it in social media, so the world cannot see it. They already shows their action that there has nothing to do, there's nothing what they say matches their word.
Niloofar, I want to understand your story from a small Afghan girl to a pilot, that to first woman pilot, your journey, what all problems you faced, what all struggles you faced, and how this journey took over.
Well, it definitely was a difficult. I grew up, my childhood actually was spent under such kind of civil war and the Taliban's regime in Afghanistan. It was terrible to see. I felt bad about myself being a woman that they wouldn't let me just go to school. They took away the right of education from me. And it would always stay with me, that pain, that I would have lack of confidence on myself, that probably something is wrong with me.
How old were you when they stopped you by going to the school?
Well, I was born during the civil war in Afghanistan. So I became an immigrant. I went, I had to leave the country, and, being a child, and because of their law, because of their extremists, my family had to be an immigrant. And I spent half of, the childhood that I had to enjoy in a refugee camp. And even though there wasn't any school for us, there wasn't any education for us, coming back to Afghanistan, Taliban was still in control. There was no school open. When I had to go to elementary school, not only for me, for entire women and girls in Afghanistan, the education was abandoned. There was no school for any woman. And I was one of them as well, seeing that even small thing, having a right of education is taken away from a woman. I'm not even talking about being part of the society, being part of the Congress, just to be educated. They didn't want the woman to be educated. The Taliban's war is always against women. They have a war just against women. And that's what they have done in the past. They took away my childhood, the freedom of my speech, the freedom of having a right to be educated. And now they're starting the same games again. There's no change on them. And that's how I had to grow up and struggle with that. And it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. If the world forget their past, Afghan women and innocent people in Afghanistan is not going to forget that violence that they have done against all the women in the country.
Okay, what happened after you became a pilot? I think you got a lot of threats and people who tried to even kill you. So, what was that episode?
Well, unfortunately, as any, activist or any woman that tries to raise their voice, especially, being in the military, wearing the uniform, trying to serve your country, fight against the Taliban. Of course, they always tried to silence me. They always tried to hurt any one of my family, myself included. And always nonstop they would threaten me for stop doing what I'm doing because this is not a place for a woman. Or seeing a woman in uniform, even it's hard for people in the society, for educated people. I'm not even talking about the Taliban only. It's a hard, even for people that take away just the right of going to school from someone. Do you think it's acceptable on their law, on their book, that woman has to be part of the military, wear the uniform, fight against them? That's unacceptable for them. And that's what they tried for years and years to silence me. And unfortunately, the threat wasn't only on myself directly. They have started threatening my family, a small member of my family, anyone that they could. And just because, what they have done is there's 1,000 other men, but what they do is always, they are just afraid of women for some reason. I don't know why. They are afraid of women, which is basically known for the entire world, which does not make sense to me. Why they are so afraid of women. And that's what they have done against me, my family, tried to silence me, tried to kill a member of my family. And it has been heartbreaking, like a nightmare to think what I have done wrong. I have tried to serve my country, be a voice, wear the uniform, and be part of the society. I don't think somebody has to be punished for that.
I heard your father, your mother, your brother were also targeted and they had to leave the country.
So many times, yes. My brother been targeted twice. They shot my brother, and they just made my life miserable. Like I have done something terrible that entire my family had to be punished for it. And as I mentioned, I wish the threat was only against me directly, but they start threatening any member of my family they could to stop me, to warn me that I have to stop what I'm doing.
Niloofar, you being Muslim, how do you differentiate the Islamic law or Sharia law? That is what Taliban is saying, that under Islamic and Sharia law, we will give freedom for the women. So what exactly Sharia law says and Islamic law says? Does it says that you control women, you take all the freedom from women? Is that what Islam says?
Absolutely, that's not what Islam said, to shut the voice of women, to be violent against women. That's exactly not what Islam said. Because I am an Afghan Muslim woman and I have read Quran and I know there is so many good things said for women. Women have a right to be educated. The Prophet, their wives were fighting in the same battlefield with them. They were nurses, they were doctors, they were in a battlefield. And Islam does not abandon women to work, to be educated, to have a voice. This is not an Islam. I'm saying it because that's the real Islam. Those extremist group that they're using the name of Islam and whatever is in their mind and opinion, they put it on the religion and says religion says you have to be violent against women, you have to be given no voice to a woman. That's not what Islam says. That's absolutely wrong. And I would 100% guarantee that that's wrong. That's not what Islam says. Islam gave a right for a woman to be educated and have a voice. But in their book, in those extremist book, it's always blame it on religion, that religion says a woman has no voice.
In the name of Islam, Taliban is actually misleading the young mind. And I heard that your mother was also targeted once when she was taking a child, a sick child, to a hospital. and she was brutally beaten by the Talibanis. So what happened on that time, during that time?
You know,
What was the
that
exact face of Taliban?
that memory, you know, for any child in the world, it stick with them forever. You know, like why it has to be in a society that a man has to work. And if there is just one man in a family, why a woman has to be treated this way just because she had to take her sick child to the hospital because she was so scared that, you know, my sister was really sick and had to take her to the hospital because she didn't know if my sister is going to survive or not. My dad was at work. We couldn't get hold of him. So my mother, with the rush, get out of the house, and she tried to take my sister to the hospital by having my little brother to take them with them. Unfortunately, my mom just got stopped for what? Just because she had a burqa on her head, but unfortunately she forgot, instead of putting shoes on, she put a flip-flop on, and her foot was showing, and she got beat up. She got punished just because of that little thing. And that's just a small example. That's very
Just because her feet was seen and she got beaten.
just because her feet was showing, and that's not because she purposely did it. It's just because she was so worried and concerned and scared that she might lose her daughter, and that's what she got punished for. You know, that's as a small part. That's a small example in the society under the Taliban regime. We have been witness of the Taliban stoning women in Kabul stadium. They would kill and shot the women in their head. And they have, you know, their violence is proven to the world. It's not only one woman. Probably if you ask so many women during the Taliban regime in the past, they have all experienced this terrible, terrible actions by Taliban. And they're all worried that this is going to happen again, which is already slowly happening. They're taking away everything from the, you know, people in Afghanistan, so they would not have a voice to post it or send it to the other side of the world to see what the Taliban are doing. They're slowly start doing that. So once the connection is stopped between Afghanistan and the world, they're going to be the same extremists that they have been years ago. There's no change on them.
Do you think that Taliban might change for the world to show the world, okay, we are giving freedom, like we will allow women to go and work and stuff? That is what they have been repeatedly saying. Do you think Taliban will give some kind of freedom to the women this time, or as you said, they will be same?
As I mentioned, so far, their action didn't prove that. As I mentioned before, you know, what they say, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me and other people in Afghanistan until they prove themselves. I really hope they will prove me wrong. I really pray for the day that they prove me wrong, that I have said they never changed. They're still the same evils. But I hope they prove me wrong, that woman has a place and a right and a position on their government. Then I'm waiting for that day, honestly. But
If you get a
my
chance,
heart, my mind,
If you get a chance to go back and join Afghan Air Force under Taliban's government, will you do that?
it's a very hard question because I cannot work under the government that they are violent, they're extremist. My answer will be no. Unless they change themselves, they will be a better people, they will be better Muslims. I absolutely, why not?
Okay, if they change and if they prove that they will respect women and they are going to give that freedom which you were getting during this 20 years, and you may join the Afghan Air Force again. Okay, my last question for you, Niloofar, that the women who are there in Afghanistan, right? And as Taliban is back, are you worried that terror or terrorism will be back? And what kind of freedom does the woman will get there? And what the other activists like you, like who are fighting for women right in Afghanistan, are gonna do? How are you gonna voice out your views and opinions, being not in Afghanistan?
Well, it's a very hard situation at the moment because, I really hope the world, the UN, and entire world would understand what Afghan women are going through right now. It's really heartbreaking to see every day they are raising their voice. They are trying that the Taliban at least hear their voice. They're not asking for more. They're not asking for just give me the freedom of how I, present myself. It's all about I need to have a place in the society. I need to have a voice in the society, and I need to have a right of education in the society. That's all they're asking. But the Taliban are not ready to give it to them. They think they're violent protesters and they have to be punished. They are. There is so many strong and brave women right now in Afghanistan that they are raising their voice. All they get is violence. Only those activists in Afghanistan cannot do and help and get what they want. They have to have some type of international support on their back. I really hope the world will support their voice. The world at least support that. Don't let them alone. Don't let them on the hand of devils, because they're gonna kill all of them, which is, those innocent people, those women, they have no gun, they have no equipment to go fight against the Taliban. All they have is their voices. And I really hope that the world will at least support them, at least the world stand behind them. Because as far as I can tell, it's really concerning. It's very concerning, that future of Afghan women, how it's going to look like, because there's nothing look like possible and positive. And I really hope there will be some governments and leaders and international attention on their side to help them at least to get to find their voice back, and not let them to go back to those dark days that Afghan women they experienced before.
Even we hope the same, that international agencies, other countries come forward to help Afghanistan and the people who are there and their freedom, and hope everything resumes well, and the people like you may come forward to help women who are still there in Afghanistan. And I even hope that the kids, the children, they get a better future. As you said that you lost your childhood, and kids out there will not lose their childhood. And for the new government, so-called new government, who call themselves as we Talibans are changed, we are not the same Talibans, we will do all possible things which is there in Sharia or Islamic law. So do you see any clause where they put this word in front that okay, Islamic law is there, Sharia law is there, under that they will snatch over everything once again?
Well, I believe, it's a hard thing. It's a hard decision, and it's a hard kind of future to see, because I don't see that's even possible. Because if you really have a government is built up by a terrorist groups, like what they announced their groups right now, the Taliban's government, they're all the people, especially, some of the people in power right now in Afghan government. Most of them, they should have been in jail at the moment, but they are in power in Afghanistan. So it's kind of scary to see how all this is going to happen. It's like unbelievable for me. Like I go speechless to even think about it. How all these changes is going to be possible under such kind of government and such kind of people, even though they would have, all the voices they can. It's hard for them to change, because their mind and their mentality, it's completely something that it is locked. They say it's impossible and impossible, and it's negative. And how would you change a person like that to change their mind? And that's the difficult thing to do, even though you have 10 million voices behind you.
I totally understand your worry, Niloofar, and I hope that we can pray together for Afghanistan, people out there, kids, and the humanity which is at risk. Thank you so much for joining with us, and I hope everything come back to normal as it was.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.